All right, how's everybody? So today, no update, obviously. I'm gonna try to get past this, but I don't know. I just had this idea that I kind of wanted to throw out, and I guess you would call this Project Reborn. Okay. So what am I currently thinking? Well, so for those of us who grew up, obviously with the Nintendo from the very beginning, have basically seen this long chain of consoles. Back every couple of years we get a few new consoles. We got Sony with with the PlayStation. We got Nintendo with the Nintendo, the NES and Super NES, 64, yada yada yada, Genesis, that type of thing. So for those of us who are old enough to remember, you know, Sega brought out their first ever CD, or rather, this actually not their first CD, their second CD based system entitled the Sega Saturn. And it sold fairly well, but it was pricey. Okay. So, and plus, the load times were pretty slow and what have you. But of course, at the time, it was, pretty new technology that really wasn't balanced quite right yet. They hadn't figured it out. So, at least for the time being. Now, how we have the Saturn come out as of today, that'd be a totally different story. But see, the thing is, the Saturn has been out. It's been out, and of course, it's now, shelfware. So as you can tell, sitting behind me here, besides the Blu-rays and stuff, there as well, behind me here is literally my entire PS3, PS4, and sitting right here beside me, I kid you not, this right here is my entire PS5 library on physical media. That's all I have for the PS5. Well, how come you don't have as many games for the PS5 as you do the PS4? Well, for starters, you can't afford everything, right? Which is why I like to shop at local thrift stores to find my stuff. Why? Simple. It's cheaper. So, of course, I could ramble on and on and on about Sony's dumb decision to, no longer have physical discs and give my opinion on that. Fact is, I'm still going to keep buying PlayStation products for the time being. I will wait for certain games to come out on physical disc, and I will be hunting down those physical discs on the cheap when I'm ever able to find them. But here's my thing, though, is that I had this idea. So, of course, most of us remember the Saturn. It did fairly okay. It was awesome, and it had 6 buttons. Mainly because of Super Street Fighter, because, you had to have your low, mid, and your high punches and kicks, which you couldn't really do on the Super Nintendo at the time. So, this is my opinion. This is my idea. So, for anybody out there who works for Sega, take this idea and run with it. Okay? I guess you could call this Project Reborn, or whatever it is you want to call it. But here's the thing. I believe it was around 95 or 96, they had the idea of bringing out a 64-bit, I believe it was 64-bit, new CD-based console called the Sega Neptune, which would also help kind of compete with Sony's original PlayStation at the time. Obviously, we know which system won because, well, the Neptune was scrapped. So here's the thing, Sega. For somebody who watches this, anybody who works at Sega, even if you're the low, high food chain, wherever, this is my idea. Sega, if you want to make a major comeback, okay, you want to have your underdog story 2.0, okay, here's what you do. This is my idea. So, you remember that project entitled Neptune, right? It was never fully finished, correct? I'm sure you probably still have your plans buried deep somewhere in your archives for the design of that system. Here's what you do. You rip out the old guts, right? You no longer make it a CD based. However, you do keep some of that. You add a laser. You add a 4K player system into there. Not only that, it can play Blu-rays, 4Ks, and DVDs. So you got three different, physical media disc systems that it can play, and it's all region free. Okay. Which is pretty much what most of it is. And on top of that, once you play a certain amount of 4Ks from certain countries, it does not get locked in that region. Everything stays region free. So, here's what you do. You bring out, those old data plans with the old Neptune, right? You keep the box design the same. You swap out the drives, and you take out that old composite cable thing, and you switch it to a nice, solid HDMI cable. And you keep basically about the power outlet roughly about the same, with the little prong that does not have that stupid box attached to it. Just a simple cable. There you go. So, what do you do about packaging wise? Well, you can call this, Neptune Project Neptune 2.0. Okay. So, what do? Here's what you do. You keep the game price that you were going to sell it at for $149.99. Not only will you get more consoles sold, you have people that can afford it, right? Because not everybody can afford a $1,000 gaming system. And on top of that, you work your way around to not make your games eat up 150 to 160 gigabytes for your save data. Revert back to kilobytes. There's probably a way to do that somehow. Somebody probably has already done it. But here's another thing that you do with it. So, for some of your launch titles, you could have, come up with a couple of new games. Like, for example, we all know you have the rights to Sonic the Hedgehog. Okay, so entitle a new Sonic game, call it Sonic Neptune. Like some of your big major titles will have the Neptune, subtitle underneath it. Sonic Neptune. Echo the Dolphin Neptune or Echo Neptune. Games like that. But what about the old school games? Well, yes, you could do it digitally, but the thing is, why? Don't do it. Here's what you do. You partner up with a company like, say, RetroArch, for example. You partner up with them to use their emulation software, and you put a Blu-ray, like, say, a 50 gigabyte Blu-ray, and you go out to all the gaming companies, or you look at all your licenses that you still have, or somehow can work a deal with it, and you put the entire Genesis library on one Blu-ray. Why? They don't need to be upgraded to HD. Let it play in retro style. Let it play in SD. Because those files are so small, right? You can fit pretty much the entire library of the Sega Genesis library, all of it, and roughly at about 2 gigabytes, which is nothing. That's nothing. That's like the size of a flash drive, like one of those little itty bitty flash drives. That's all it takes. And what do you do with that? I guess you could call it, the Genesis Retro Library or something like that. And what do? That gets put with every single system. It comes with it. Just like you're pulling a page, like from Nintendo, when they would sell, they would package, Mario and Duck Hunt with the Nintendo, Super Mario World with the Super Nintendo, and, course, and you say, featuring, the original Sonic the Hedgehog, all these great classic games, but this time you get the entire library. Not only will people get a brand new system for $150, right? But they will get over, 3 to maybe 400 games for that price, while you guys keep working on new titles. Like, for example, like I said, Sonic Neptune, Echo Neptune, Double Dragon Neptune. You go back to those old fighting games, King of Fighters, bring those back. But on top of that, speaking of those type of titles, here's what also you do when it comes to using RetroArch or whatever it is, if you use for an emulation software. You get backward compatibility for those of us who still own the SEGA Saturn games and the Dreamcast games. Yes, people who have those original discs, make your disk drive playable for those two specific hardwares. For example, like if I know RetroArch does that, if you still have like your games, throw it in a PC drive, it'll play right off the disc. That's all you need to do. I mean, look at this already. You've already got 3 older systems already on a new console for those of us who still own those old school games. Like I said, and then on top of that, you can start working on newer titles. You get the titles that are currently being made for PlayStation or whatever, or whoever. You get them back. You get gamers back. Okay? Not only will you have new physical media sales, you will have lots of happy people, and on top of that, you're going to have kids. Okay? Kids whose families who don't have much money due to whatever the hell it is. $150 this day and age for a gaming console with one Blu-ray that already has over 300 plus games, that alone is worth it. And on top of that, it's affordable. It's that easy. We don't need to spend $1,000 on a damn gaming console where, for example, like games like, for example, Final Fantasy Rebirth and Remake, these 2 games alone, right, eat up 260 gigabytes of a 1 terabyte hard drive. That's literally a fourth of the entire hard drive just to save. Go back to, what the PS2 did. Go back to megabytes. Hell, go back to using kilobytes of memory. It shouldn't take that much of a brain to figure that out. That way, when we have a lot of games, guess what? We won't be eating up a whole bunch of memory. And then also, speaking of the data drive, when it comes to storage, you don't have 1 single terabyte anymore. We're way beyond past that. Put at least an 8 terabyte hard drive in there, which is almost pretty about normal by the time if somebody has this idea. So yeah, that would be my idea of having Sega's big resurrection when it comes to consoles. Bring back the Neptune. Make it Project Neptune 2.0. Bring it back. Let's get that console out here. I mean, I'm being dead serious. If you want to beat Sony for whatever crap it is that they're doing right now, if you want to make a major underdog comeback, basically, if you want to be Rocky, okay, so, Sony is Apollo, okay? They beat you in the first round, which was like 30 years ago, okay? Give or take. If you want to come back and you want to win the championship, you want to win the championship, you want to beat Apollo, Sony, make this happen. Have some people that work there figure it out. I'm sure there's probably people sitting around right now trying to figure out, some of that stuff is probably already there. We're just not utilizing it. Seriously, I'm being dead serious about it. Try it. Make this happen. Bring back the Neptune. I know I never owned a Sega Saturn. I never owned a Genesis. The only Genesis I ever got to own in my entire lifetime was the Mini. Yeah. I used to play my uncles all the time. And the thing what sucked about the Mini was that you couldn't even play the original games on there, which sucked. And they only had 30 games? That was like this much memory. Barely even anything on it. You could have put so much more on there. That's where that disc comes into play. So yeah, that's my idea of Sega's major comeback if they want to do it. Now, somebody can take my idea and run with it. You can. I'm sure the head honchos will probably say, "Well, we don't know. Try it. What's there to lose?" That's my idea. So, like, subscribe, hit that notification button, leave a comment down below. What do you know? Also, let me know your thoughts on this grand idea. You know, I mean, like I said, it's just it's a system title just sitting there waiting to be used by Sega. Seriously. So with that, see you later.